Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. Peggy and I are so glad you could spend a little part of your Saturday. It's going to be a pretty nice Saturday, few maybe thunderstorms, but a good day to get out in the garden.
I'm grateful for the rain, personally. You know, I've been tired of these long, dry summers. I like
pulling
it.
the hoses out. And
Yes, I really have done very little of that, and that's great.
Yeah. Well, we have a great show for you today. It's going to be, 4th of July is coming up this week, and you want to get out in the garden and enjoy your landscape. So we've got great ideas for you. Now, last week we started with shady gardens, and we're going to kind of do a continuation of that. So if you've got some shade, this is perfect for you.
Actually, we're using my own garden, and which all of you who've watched for a long time know is my experiment station, and living place. Okay, it's a very naturalistic area. In fact, so naturalistic because of the rains. I had to dash out this morning, thank goodness for the early sunrise, and pick some of the evergreens that were here, and I encountered a young opossum in the process.
Had a little visit this morning.
It's a nature preserve too, most of which I enjoy, some of which I'd rather not have. But also I heard some barking in the back and ran back the other evening, and there were two of the cutest baby foxes just rolling and tumbling, So it's a great environment. It really is,
That's great.
And we are going to continue to talk about shade. We really intensely looked at one area of the garden and why it works. And now we're going to progress into a totally different part of the garden, realizing that whatever you see that you like is adaptable. Everything is, And so kind of keep that in mind, that it doesn't have to be presented this way, but can be used somewhere else. And if your space is small, can be adapted to the small space too. I think we should bring up the first picture to hopefully get you excited about some of the plants that do well in shade, because shade gardening is cool.
Right. Do we have that first picture? There you go.
In so many ways.
No, not that one.
Well, that's all right. We'll use this one for a second.
There we go.
Okay. In the first one, we'll say what we talked about last week really was pretty much the area that you saw in the first picture. And then beyond that picture is what we're going to talk about today, and the plants that thrive there, not just survive, but thrive. Look at this astilbe. Now, this was not taken in my garden, okay? This was actually taken a couple of years ago, and I just loved this picture because it's the epitome of what astilbe can do for you. Astilbe is a perennial, varying in heights, loves part shade, will actually grow in sun, but it requires an awful lot of moisture if it's going to grow there, okay? So, lots of variety of bloom time and height too, from let's say 12 inches up to some of them almost 3 feet. But look at the color play. Now granted, perennials have a period of bloom. So remember, as you're seeing these things today, that they may have a bloom time, but you want the foliage to be attractive when the bloom is over, and astilbe foliage is, okay? So that's an intro to today's show.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, before we get started, I think you had a couple of plants.
Well,
plants of the week, plants of the week.
Yes,
Highlighted plants.
I can never limit things to one.
Kind of like what's your favorite plant?
No,
the one you're looking
the one
at.
I'm standing in front of, okay? I'm going to bend it down, okay, out of the picture a little bit, and to bring up a fun plant. Now, this plant is not a shade plant. It will survive and not just survive, but thrive in part shade. As long as it gets 5 or 6 hours of sun during the day, it will bloom beautifully until frost takes it out. Now, this is Rudbeckia. It isn't totally perennial. It's commonly called Gloriosa daisy, comes in different colors, is a wonderful cut flower. and it will reseed itself. So it's in bloom now. Come in and totally enjoy this. You can go ahead and plant it in the garden and have color. Not only color, but color that you can cut.
And again, that's a full sun.
Absolutely.
Not the shade that we're talking about the rest of the show.
I always frighten Debbie because I seem to accumulate this pollen and whatever.
Always starts a couple minutes after 8. I've never understood this.
I think this is psychological.
I think so. I think so. Well, we had mentioned that it's 4th of July this week, so you actually have some red, white, and blue plants to show.
This is another fun part of gardening, is the ability, particularly with containers, okay? One doesn't want to plant the entire garden red, white, and blue, okay? At least I don't, you know. Do whatever you enjoy. But with containers, they're mobile. You can move them, okay, or change them if you need to. So I am going to step back
and the way here.
Yeah, can you do that, Deb? Which is, I think I'll do this. Okay, container gardening. A little red, white, and blue, fun, okay? Into this container is euphorbia. It's diamond frost, and it grows in full sun, but it will also grow in part shade. Blue is a little hard to come by, so I had a little fun with this one. I went out and picked some of my wonderful blue hydrangeas and tucked them into a little blue container. This was just a little fun afterthought. That thing has water in it because I don't want them to die. Amazingly, they'll stay for several days. And then I just tucked that down into that pot. So now I've got my blue. There are blue flowers. They're not totally blue, some are. You can substitute something that has a little purple in it and call it blue if you want to. Lisianthus, this will take the heat too and be a good sun plant. The begonia, which we have depended heavily upon this year because we don't have the bedding impatiens, and it works, you know. And it comes in pink and it comes in white. But I've used this one, and the bronze leaf will grow beautifully in full sun or in shade. So begonias, the euphorbia, and there are a lot of other fun plants that can be used in containers that can welcome your guests on the 4th of July.
That's right.
Yeah.
I do want to mention, as you're sitting back down here, we will be open on the 4th of July at Merrifield Garden Center, but we're going to close at 5, so we can go enjoy the picnics and barbecues and fireworks and that type of thing. Also, if you're looking for something for, if you're going to party, need a hostess gift, or if you're decorating, we've got some great tropicals, some flowering tropicals that we've got on sale. A select group of those at all 3 locations, so you know, take advantage of that.
And bearing in mind that those tropicals will also continue to bloom until frost, so it's a bargain.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, it is.
Win-win.
You know. I always justify things like that.
Right.
I say we women justify things well.
That's
you know. I think about a cut flower arrangement and what that costs, and it lasts a week if you're lucky. Buy this container and it'll last till
all
frost.
summer.
I like that.
Also, we've got a lot to going on today, so we're again not going to be taking phone calls. I'm sorry, but believe me, it'll be worth it when you see all these ideas that Peggy's got. So when we come back, Peggy's going to go out into our virtual garden and show you some close-up ideas. Stay tuned. Okay, well, I told a little fib. Peggy's not out in our virtual garden this time. We'll hopefully do that next time. But we've got lots of great plants to show you, and mainly ideas to show you, not individual plants, but groupings of plants and that type of thing.
More groupings, because you want to have these things in harmony with one another. You know.
Absolutely.
So some plant choices for sure. And if we bring up that first picture, which I've always enjoyed, you know, I don't consider myself to be a pro photographer, but I certainly do enjoy the photography thing.
Great.
And every now and then you capture a picture that you really like. So if we bring up the first picture, this is the epitome. I love the fairies, and as you all know, I have a large fairy garden, and that has really taken off now, finally, with the people becoming familiar with it. But the question always is, what can I do with a shade garden? And the answer is there are a lot of fun things that you can do with a shade garden. And I've spent the last 50 years trying to prove it.
And you've done it.
Now, I have to say, and we'll elaborate later on, the type of trees that you may be gardening beneath is where you can get the challenge. And the major challenge is the root system of plants like large maple trees that have surface roots. But I don't have that. I am dealing with oaks, tulip poplars, and other types of plants that are deeper rooted. So it's a little easier, but there's a catch to even making that work. Let's progress, because I've got a number of pictures here that are examples of what I have done and the reasons as to why I did it. Now we are looking back at the house area and the area that we talked about last week. And you can see that there is quite a canopy here. Now, shade can come from a lot of different areas, okay? You need to identify what kind of shade you have. It is under established oaks. There is sweet gum here. There are a lot of understory trees. And if you have a small space and you don't have large shade trees, go with those understory trees like dogwood, like crepe myrtle, like, oh, so many flowering things. Okay, so we've established what we're going to look at. Now, in the next picture, this is a major outdoor living space for us. God has blessed us with a wonderfully large family. Lots of children and grandchildren. And we live in this garden when they're there. And our friends and our neighbors and the tours that I agree to every now and then, you know, need space to enjoy being out in the garden. And so I realized that this outer patio area, as I call it, needed expanding, and so I really kind of did it myself. I had a slate patio out there which was very small, and so I literally put down landscape fabric, threw some irregular slates on it, and between all those slates the red stone, and it's been so satisfactory. And then enlarged the area and the amount of seating. And in that space, in the shade, I have used containers extensively. With the seasons, bulbs started off. Then we go into the things that like the cool spring, and then I change them over to the summer color, okay? Let's see where we go from this sitting area, where we actually enjoy the garden. There are pathways that lead in lots of directions, okay? And in this particular path, it leads down by a creek. And I want to show you what is contained in the large planting areas beneath the trees there. You will find along the edges, you're going to find a lot of hosta. You're going to find a lot of different types of boxwoods that are edging that path. And then you're going to find in the next picture a lot of understory trees like natives, like the fringe tree. I love those. Now there's also one that's non-native and Chinese, and it's wonderful, blooms later. You will find many dogwood in the next picture. Fortunately, among the dogwood trees, you have usually first blooming our natives, and I have a lot of natives. And then you have the hybrids that come into bloom, and they're fantastic. And then you have the kusas. Now, beneath all of that, there is what I'm calling a large ground cover territory. And there we will find a hardy geranium. You'll find phlox. This is Phlox divaricata, and in the next picture is Phlox stolonifera. They're slightly different. They are all natives. There are an incredible number of ferns that are playing together, and similarly in the next picture you'll see those same ones playing around with the hosta. And it's wonderful because they all play well together. Nobody is aggressive in this group. It's like a garden club. I mean, not a garden club. Yeah, they can be aggressive.
Garden club.
Okay, I've been there, done that. Okay. Kindergarten's really what I was thinking. No one stands out in the crowd. When you throw a really aggressive plant into the group, you've got to fight to keep it from taking over. But all of these plants, the hardy geranium, that is for shade, maculatum is the one that's great. And the foliage is beautiful. It's evergreen, and it's so fragrant.
That's great.
Beautiful, but they play well together.
We're going to take a quick break. As we go out to break, we're going to take a few seconds and show you some of the plants that were highlighted up on the screen.
Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor, and we are in the cool of a shade garden. And right now it is certainly thriving because it's had a wonderful amount of water. It's just such a pleasure to be out there in it. This is still the same territory that we're walking down the paths, okay? And we're looking at what is in bloom. And at the moment, I do have we talked about the hardy geranium. This is different than the pelargoniums, okay? This is maculatum. It is the one hardy geranium that loves the shade. Beautiful evergreen foliage, fragrant too, and different types of hosta. I love the polygonatum, or Solomon's seal. This is a pleasant mix of plants. This particular geranium will not bloom for a long time. It's usually about a month. But the foliage is so beautiful. And then the foliage color here of the polygonatum and the hosta keeps it interesting for the rest of the season. All right, let's run through several of these here because I've got quite a few of them, really. Want to talk about dry shade? Because there is dry shade, and I even have it beneath those oak trees when we have dry summers. Epimedium is another perennial that will take that. I'm not going to say that it's always going to thrive if it gets terribly dry and you don't give it a little additional water every 3 or 4 weeks at least. But here is a plant that blooms beautifully in the really early spring and then is a ground cover of foliage. It too is evergreen until like February, and then it looks pretty bad. The best thing to do is to whack it back, let those blooms come up in all their glory, and then you have the new growth, and it's gorgeous thereafter. Epimedium, wonderful even in dry shade once it's established. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is an overview. I wanted you to see how well these plants do play together. No aggressive ones, all about the same type of growth habit. The geranium, the hosta, the polygonatum. On beyond, there's a repetition, as you can see, of some of these. That's what makes it flow, keeps it from being interesting. Keeps it interesting. There is also in here rhododendron, azalea. You've got evergreen in shrubs that's a part of this. But look at the ebb and flow of this. It's not all the same height. There is some height variation which really makes it work. Let's go to the next one, please. Can you turn to the next slide, please? There we go. Let's get back on this path. focal point at the end, an interesting bench. That's one thing that makes paths work, because it's a destination that you're going to. It always also gives you a nice place to sit down when you get there, okay? Let's go closer to the destination. What is there? Something else that's interesting. I love the small things that are out in the garden, and I have a lot of them, but you don't see them all at once, which would not be so good. So I've got this small little statue here, and guess what? I use containers out in the garden also. Carex, beautiful plant. Back in here, contrast the foliage makes all this work. Look how pretty that grass is with that hosta. This is Hakanakloa. It's a mouthful, I know, but it's a beautiful grass. All right, when I took this picture, the bedding impatiens were in use. Not now. We don't know what their future's going to hold. In the meantime, you can use begonias. They work really well. Let's see, after we've had our little rest in our tour of this garden, let's see what's next. What's next is along the path to our next destination. A different type of hosta with a beautiful lungwort here, pulmonaria, okay? They call it lungwort because of the pattern on the leaves. And then I've got heuchera and heucherella and fern, slightly different plants, but enough repetition to make all of this work. The next one, please. Guess what's in the spring? This entire area is covered with different kinds of bulbs. Now, tulips are much loved by deer. They're also a little difficult to get to come back year after year, but not this one. Next year, next fall, look for chrysanthemum. This is a species type tulip, and it just gets better as time goes by. Absolutely beautiful. Next picture, please. Bulbs, early spring, long time, but you know what? When this foliage dies back, all those perennials come up from being asleep all winter and cover that foliage. Next, please. I have a lot of Helleborus back in this area. Helleborus is an outstanding plant. Blooms for a long period of time and then's evergreen. Let's see the next one, please. Debbie, do we have another one in this particular? This is one more, okay? All right. In this same area, okay, we're walking really close to what we're going to investigate next. Look at that beautiful big foliage. Jack in the Pulpit. This happens to be an oriental one, but I am lucky enough to have native Jack in the Pulpit. They're absolutely beautiful. Look for this wonderful, wonderful plant here too. Gives you bloom in the shade, Lutea, okay? Now, we're going to be back in a moment and we're going to see a totally different area. Those that like water. Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor, and welcome back again to the world of gardening in shade. And most of the time when we come in, even to a new place that's all sunny, we add small trees at least, and before long you have some degree of shade. Now, we've walked through last week the back deck area and behind the house in that outdoor living space. We've traveled out into the garden through the outer patio and more into the heavier wooded area. There is a small stream. At one time, many years ago, it was from a spring and it was beautiful, but hey, we've had a lot of development around it and it's changed the situation. So that spring is not always free flowing. It dries up quite a bit. But it is a moist area, and you don't have to have a stream to deal with moisture sometimes in your garden. And you ask, what's going to take the moisture? Okay, we're going to look at this large area in here. And actually there's a lot of variation because it's more moist down by the stream and in the low area, which used to be a small pond when the children were growing up. But now it's changed. As you progress up this bank, it can be quite moist, but it dries out too. So you've got different needs for different plants. And here's the beauty of this. You need to know, what does that plant require to grow well? You say, okay, find some plants that like moisture, and they're there, okay? Leading down to this is the liriope. It is a wonderful plant. Evergreen, gets cut back in March. Other than that, it's evergreen. It'll grow in sun, in shade, and any degrees between that, and it'll take moisture and it'll take drought. What more can you ask for? It's a fantastic, and blooms also in the summertime. A lot of astilbe here. You can see astilbe in bloom, but there's varying cultivars here, and so they bloom at different times. There's other shade plants, and astilbe likes the moisture. There's different ferns that like the moisture. There's a plant called, which you can't see in this particular picture, ligularia, which likes the moisture. Progressing up from that, the nandina will take some wet feed as long as it dries out in between. And as you progress up from that, a magnificent variegated redbud. I love that tree. Let's continue and see a little bit more about this space. All right, you can see this when the water is running. And by the way, the water was running yesterday. And when I dashed down this morning to cut some of these pieces so that I could, if we have time, show you, it was out of banks. It was up to this area here, flowing and over into here. So it was a pretty heavy flow. But you know what? These plants took it. So sometimes you need plants that will hold the soil and not let it wash away. This is Carex ice dance. Similar to liriope. It's variegated, it's attractive. The deer have never eaten it, which is wonderful. They will munch on liriope. And tropicals, incredible. Alocasia, colocasia, often loosely referred to as elephant ear. Yes, you have to dig those in the fall, but that's not a terribly big deal. Look at that contrast with that big leaf, and guess what? They love moisture. Let me step back a little bit. There's also Haconocloa, which likes moisture. And it's magnificent also. There's a repeat so that it holds this soil. But you know that astilbe was amazing. It will pop up after all that water runs by. Let's see the next one. Huh. Big ears. Okay. Wonderful. I took this a couple of years ago. Look at the size of this, and we have them right now. They're not available in the early spring. They're a summer thing. And so we have these alocasia, the colocasia, these black-looking elephant ears. They are so wonderful. And Eamon, our youngest grandchild, was so excited with this one that I thought this was precious. So you've seen it before. Let's move on to the next one. Here we are, back to that wonderful Carex ice dance. And the next one, please. Back to the overview. Look at the plant that's in bloom. Also in this area, another plant that likes some moisture is the clump-forming bamboo. From this area where its feet are not wet, I also have some evergreen in the laurel, the Otto Lukens laurel. It does not tolerate wet feet. So there's the beauty. You do what likes the dry in one area and what likes the wet in the other. I think we have another couple of pictures, do we? Yes. Okay, let's leave that particular area. and let's go to another area. Go back on that path. We're going to pass the bench that we were on before. This is landscape fabric, the black fabric that water goes through, all put into place, and on top of that, the red stone. Easy to walk on, easy to maintain, fun. Okay, we're going to travel up this path. Okay, one more picture as a teaser for where we're going next. We're going to travel up this path. We're going to travel past Nandina. We're going to travel past upright boxwood. Here's another one that leads the eye. And some fun things on the shed as we're going to our next destination. So we will be back in a moment, and we're going to show you another fun place and fun idea in the garden. We're in black now.
All right, welcome back to you. Welcome back to you out of the virtual garden.
Where am I in this?
That's right. We've got more great ideas to share with you, because Peggy's yard is just fascinating. It goes on and on and on. So we've visited a couple of areas in there, and we've got another one to see.
But I don't want to overwhelm anybody with on and on and on.
Well, that's
you
true.
know, it just happens that way. because it's a thought process. It's an idea. It's an opportunity to see how these plants grow together and make those decisions. As the little fairy was saying, what? It's what you like. Which plants do you enjoy? But being sure at the same time that those plants are going to enjoy where you're putting them, okay? And how you deal with those. How do you water them? How do you plant them? What is the soil like? We'll deal with that in the next segment. First, I want to get you inspired to doing this, okay? It's not just plants, Debbie. The plants are beautiful, and we need them. But it's the structure of the garden that's important too.
Right. All works together.
And that's part of what makes this work. It's how do you get from one area to the next. And even in a small garden, you can have a little secluded area. You can have a little path. And you can get even more particular with it. I think about those incredible small stones in Greece that were so precisely placed. And if I had a space about this long, maybe I could do that, you know? All right, let's talk about those wonderful paths. The path changes somewhat as you go along. Most of it is the simplicity of that red stone, which I love, that Seminole chips, I think it's called. I love that red stone. But I do mix it along the way with some other stones at times, so that it's a slight change, but it all works together because they complement each other. And in this particular picture, we're traveling down that path, and we're traveling past some extremely interesting, and I love the upright boxwood. So easy, so easy. I've got to get out and trim some, just a little bit, because that time's going to get too late soon. Bordered of this path is the liriope. Liriope is a workhorse in my garden. But let's see what our destination is here. Our destination is a disappearing fountain, which is incredibly easy to install. I was amazed. Just being sure that it's on firm foundation, and rather than digging down for this, when I dug up, or we didn't dig up. We didn't dig down. We came up, because I wanted to be able to sit on this, number one. And the other thing is, I did not want to interfere with big established tree roots either. There's reasons for coming up. And so in this stone encircles a basin that holds the water, and then the fountain is on that. We have enjoyed this tremendously. Let's see in the next picture. I think it may be a little bit closer view, well, a little different view anyway. And you're seeing again that beautiful boxwood. You're seeing a kuba. You're Mahonia beelii, which is a wonderful plant, and if I get the opportunity, I'll show you the actual leaves here. All plants that love the shade. I believe there are close-ups of a couple of these in the next picture. Okay, this is a back view of that one. Let's continue with still the next picture, please. Okay, you're seeing the Akuba here. You're seeing Pieris japonica here. A lot of fern here. There are some incredibly interesting plants that really do enjoy being in this environment. Now, another thing that I enjoy. I like to be able to sit down. I don't do it a lot unless I've got company, but I've enjoyed doing this. We have a lot of different kinds of stone, and some are large slabs. And so when we put this disappearing fountain in several years ago, I chose this, well, I think it's a beautiful piece of stone.
It's really striking.
And we mounted that on other, like, they're not brick, it's concrete, but it's interesting. And we formed the pedestal for it out of that. So you can play with these things, you can get creative. It's a wonderful place to go and sit down and enjoy, and maybe a glass of wine in the evening. And in the next picture,
that brings it all together.
Just one glass of wine, please. Okay. All right.
The main thing is gardening should be fun.
Gardening should be fun. Let's talk about some of those plants that I went out and picked this morning. I'm going to make a mess of what's in front of me here, okay? And possibly that lovely little 4th of July thing might fall, but that's okay. We talked about bamboo. Mm-hmm. I don't want bamboo to deal with. Okay,
right. Be careful with bamboo.
Yeah. This is a clumping bamboo. It is not invasive. There are several varieties now, and I was looking at a couple of them in boxes out at the Fair Oaks location, and they're magnificent. Beautiful, beautiful, typical bamboo plant. This is lovely. And you know what? It's fun to cut some of these every now and then and put in an arrangement. Mm-hmm. It's great. So here it is, and it's evergreen. And it tolerates shade, it tolerates moisture. It's very tolerant. Okay. It's very tolerant.
Tolerance.
Okay, we've got some other big foliage. I was hoping to come out. Yeah, I'm going to make a real mess out of this. Okay. And it's perfectly all right because I want you to see this. We talked about Mahonia beelii. That may be a plant that you're not familiar with, and you should be. It can vary in height from 5 to 6 feet, okay, so it's pretty impressive. Evergreen, magnificent, doesn't want to be where it's wet, however. It needs to be one of those up on the border. But look at the contrast that you get if you also plant yew. Now you've got the contrast of textures. Yew will tolerate a lot of shade. Now, the deer do like yew, but there is a false yew out there that they don't like. And so if you have a lot of deer and you don't want to do a lot of spraying, try that. Hinoki cypress is another wonderful contrast that you have here. It's perfectly beautiful. We spoke of Helleborus. Look at the broad foliage of that. No, it doesn't. It's not in bloom right now. Comes into bloom, different varieties, often in January, and is still attractive often into May. But after that, you've got this strong foliage. And the foliage is interesting too. Nobody said you had to have flowers everywhere. I think that would be a little boring.
That would be.
Yeah, I like the textures.
That's right.
Look at that. Wonderful, wonderful.
That's great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a break.
All right.
And we'll come back.
We're going to talk about how you make it work.
There you go.
Right.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. Hey, I wanted to mention, we've talked about a lot of plants on. You've shared all kinds of plants. So if you'd like, on our website, MerrifieldGardenCenter.com, we list each week we have a copy of the show that's played, and usually that's up by Saturday afternoon. Sometimes it's into the week, depending on our guy getting it up there. But we also show what we call our outline. So everything is listed there, at least what we plan to talk about. That doesn't always happen the way it actually
Not
is.
everything is listed there, but some is.
But that gives you an idea. If you're looking for a plant name, and the pictures are on there too. So if you want to say, oh, that picture had what, you can tell what's what. So take advantage of that at MerrifieldGardenCenter.com, which has a lot of great information anyway. And our Facebook, it's always so fun. We've been having so much fun with the Facebook, putting up pictures. You posted several pictures and just lots of great ideas. So
it is, yes, because we're just sharing of ideas, just like the show is a sharing of ideas. It's wonderful.
Right.
Okay. We've seen a lot of plants. We've seen established garden. Now the important thing is, how do I do it?
How?
How do I do that? Because that is very important. Talking about the evolution of a garden, I've done different things in this garden throughout the years. As I said, it's been my experience, it's been my learning, and yes, I've lost plants, absolutely. I teasingly say, as you hear me all the time, that I'm going to present the beauty and let David present the beast, okay? But there's a reason for that. I don't use a lot of chemicals. And I'm not anti-chemical, but I don't use a lot of chemicals, and so I don't familiarize myself with what these chemicals will do. What I want to encourage you and everybody else to do is to buy the right plant, to buy the plant that likes the environment you're putting it in. Does it like the sun? Does it like the shade? Does it like the wet? Does it like the dry? What is going to make that plant thrive? Because if it thrives, very few bugs will bother it. Usually, a plant has a problem when it's stressed. It either needs water, it has too much water, doesn't get enough sunshine. So usually it's a stress factor that comes into that. In a shade environment where you are dealing with large established tree roots, what kind of tree roots? Large maple, silver maple in particular, Norway maple, are really problematic because they are surface roots. And it is very difficult to grow a lot of things beneath them because they are getting the moisture, they're getting the fertilizer, they're going to get it all first. And so you've got to fertilize a little bit more, you've got to water a little bit more, and you might even consider growing some things in containers to get your color or to get your interest, where they don't have to compete with the root system. How do I prepare my soil? How did I begin to prepare my soil? In earlier years, when these roots were not so established, I actually used a rototiller. You don't want to do that now under your established plants. If you've got beautiful dogwood, you've got beautiful crepe myrtle, you certainly don't want to go in there with a rototiller, okay? So here are my recommendations. I use a lot of my own composted leaves. I have a lot of them, but it doesn't take care of everywhere. We sell composted leaves in bags called Leaf Grow. It is organic. It's a good thing to use. You can put that down like 3 inches because it's organic matter.
Right.
3 inches in your entire area, and then you plant your plants through it and work that into the soil as you go.
Right.
And if you're planting large plants into it, you're not turning that whole area deeply, you're just going into that section deeply, okay? And if you continue to do this every year, the organisms, the healthy organisms in the soil, slowly break that up and take it down and improve your soil, okay? So that's the philosophy anyway, okay?
Right.
Now, you can top this with mulch. Have we run out of time?
Run out of time here.
Okay, let me tell you quickly. Water properly, not too much, not too little. Use good organic matter and enjoy.
And come by and see us if you have any questions. Next week, David will be here. We're going to be talking about summer color from trees and shrubs. So we hope you have a great week. Happy 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.